Florida once called itself the Sunshine State, a paradise built on dreams, beaches, and billion-dollar smiles. But behind the palm trees and theme parks, politics began to rot the roots of its success. This is not just a story about tourism. It's a story about power, pride, and how greed and ego can destroy even the brightest empire. Number 10. The rise of the Sunshine Empire. For most of modern history, Florida was not just a state, it was a dream, a symbol of warmth, joy, and endless possibility. The Sunshine State became the beating heart of America's vacation culture. People from across the world came searching for peace, fun, and freedom. Families from cold northern cities escaped harsh winters to feel the ocean breeze. Retirees settled down, believing they had found paradise. Theme parks, beaches, and nightlife built an image no other place could copy. By the 2000s, tourism had grown into a machine generating more than $100 billion every year. It supported more than 1 million jobs and funded entire communities. From Orlando to Miami, tourism was life itself. But the same political ambition that promised to protect Florida's greatness would soon begin to tear it apart from within. Number 9. The secret of Florida's success. Behind the glamour, there was strategy. Florida did not rely only on its beauty. It marketed that beauty with precision. Visit Florida, the state's tourism agency, became its megaphone to the world. The agency ran campaigns across Europe, Asia, and the Americas. It showed families smiling under palm trees, couples watching sunsets, and adventurers exploring the Everglades. Every dollar invested in marketing returned several more through visitor spending. Airlines expanded routes. Hotels opened new resorts. Cruise ships made Florida their home. It was a perfect cycle of growth. But perfection rarely survives politics. As new leaders took power, they saw Visit Florida not as an investment, but as a burden. Number 8. The budget cuts by 2017. Lawmakers began to question why the government needed to promote tourism at all. They argued that private companies like Disney, Universal, and large hotel chains could handle advertising themselves. They called Visit Florida an unnecessary expense. What they ignored was the simple truth that tourists do not travel for companies. They travel for destinations. Without a unified brand message, Florida would become just another place on the map. Yet the budget cuts continued. International offices were shut down. Partnerships with airlines ended. Global campaigns stopped running. The silence cost more than anyone expected. As competitors like California, Hawaii, and even Mexico increased their visibility, Florida's global voice faded into the background. Number 7. The Disney War. Then came the event that would define a new chapter in Florida's history. In 2022, Disney publicly criticized a new education law passed by the state. The government's response was immediate and aggressive. Leaders moved to strip Disney of its self-governing privileges under the Reedy Creek Improvement District. That special status had been in place since 1967 and allowed Disney to manage its own infrastructure, roads, and utilities. It had been one of the reasons the company invested billions in Florida over decades. Removing that status was more than a legal move. It was a message to every business. It said that disagreement could come with punishment. The battle between Florida's government and its most famous company became international news. The world watched a state attack its own golden goose. Number 6. The economic fallout. The feud created shockwaves. Investors who once saw Florida as a stable business environment began to hesitate. Analysts warned that uncertainty and retaliation against companies would scare away future investment. International press coverage shifted from Florida's beaches to its politics. Travel agencies in Canada and Europe reported declining interest in the state. Families no longer associated Florida with relaxation. Instead, they saw conflict and control. For small business owners, the effects were immediate. Fewer bookings, fewer customers, shorter seasons. Every canceled trip meant another employee sent home early. Even Disney slowed or paused expansion plans, including a billion-dollar project that would have brought thousands of high-paying jobs. Number 5. The numbers don't lie soon. Statistics began to tell the story that speeches tried to hide. Florida saw a noticeable drop in international arrivals. Canadian tourism fell sharply. European visitors turned to other destinations. Airlines reduced routes, cutting Florida off from valuable overseas markets. Local restaurants, souvenir shops, and transport services all reported lower revenue. Economists estimated that even a 5% drop in visitors could erase 70,000 jobs and billions in spending. Yet officials continued to deny any problem. They pointed to domestic tourism numbers and called the situation stable. But domestic visitors could not replace the massive spending of international travelers. The economic slowdown had already started, and politics had lit the fuse. Number 4. The culture war distraction. As the numbers fell, the headlines grew louder. The state became a central stage for national culture wars. Education, immigration, race, gender. Every week brought new political drama. Instead of paradise, Florida began to look like a battlefield. Tourists saw the tension and turned away. A family planning a holiday wants peace, not politics. Internationally, the damage was worse. Travel companies in Europe and Canada reported growing concern from clients who saw Florida as unfriendly and unstable. Decades of careful branding were undone in months. The phrase "the Sunshine State" no longer carried the same light-hearted meaning. Number 3. Economics versus ego. Leaders defended their actions as moral and necessary. They claimed they were protecting families and values. But every economist and business expert could see the truth. Pride had replaced planning. Ego had replaced economics. The focus was no longer on what was good for the state, but what was good for political image. The math was undeniable. Every dollar invested in tourism marketing had once returned several dollars in profit. Cutting that investment was like turning off an engine mid-flight. The airplane does not crash immediately, but it starts falling fast. The state's leaders celebrated short-term political victories, while the long-term financial foundation began to crumble. Number 2. The people caught in the middle beneath the politics are the real people who keep the tourism engine running. Hotel staff, restaurant workers, park employees, taxi drivers, small business owners. For them, the consequences were personal. Fewer tourists meant shorter work hours, smaller tips, and less income. Entire towns that relied on visitor spending began to struggle. Some residents supported the government's actions, believing they were fighting for a moral cause. Others simply wanted stability. They saw how uncertainty was draining life from their communities. Even Disney, which employs more than 70,000 people in Florida, started voicing quiet concern about the direction the state was taking. A government that once promised to defend freedom was now restricting its own growth. Number 1. The road to recovery. The story of Florida is far from over. The state still holds unmatched natural beauty. The beaches still shine. The parks still bring joy to millions. But reputation is fragile. Once broken, it takes years to rebuild. To recover, Florida must put pride aside and return to partnership. Restoring Visit Florida's full funding would be a critical first step. Rebuilding relationships with major businesses would restore investor confidence. Launching new global campaigns that highlight unity, culture, and inclusivity could remind the world why Florida was once a place for everyone. The future depends on whether leaders choose cooperation over confrontation. The world still wants to believe in the magic of Florida, but the state must give them a reason to believe again. If not, the Sunshine State may continue to dim, remembered not for its beaches, but for the moment it turned its back on its own success. Florida's story is a warning. When leaders chase control over cooperation, progress dies. The sunshine fades. The question now is simple. Can Florida recover its magic, or has it already traded its golden future for political pride?